Nature. An ever-changing tapestry of life, all existing together in a delicate ecosystem that, should it become unbalanced, could endanger each and every species within it. Such an unbalancing has occurred recently. The once great Eyrie, a monarchy of proud birds of prey who ruled these forests for countless generations, have been deposed. The Marquis de Cat and their powerful industries have dethroned the Eyrie and taken hold of these woods, seeking to shape it to their purposes. But while the birds and the cats fight, the smaller denizens of the forest suffer. And soon they will decide that the suffering must end. While this Woodland Alliance cannot hope to match the others in pure strength, they are gaining the support of the common folk. Should this support continue to surge, they may be unstoppable. And then there's this one. Isn't he cute? He mostly rummages through rocks and trades with whoever will deal with him. Oh look, he's got something in his little backpack. Isn't that adorable? Let's see what it is. Oh my. What are you going to do with that? Oh god. Oh god. Stay away. No! Hey everyone. My name is Shay Parker, and this is RTFM, the show where I teach you how to play a game. Because if playing The Pursuit of Happiness has taught me anything, it's that getting someone to do the work for you is actually the best strategy of all. And today I'm teaching you how to play Root, the woodland game of might and right. And this is an asymmetrical game of conflict between up to 4 factions that each have completely different playstyles. Now the gameplay can get a little complex, but the goal is nice and simple. The first to 30 points is the new ruler of the forest. What makes this game interesting is how each of these different factions interact with each other. You might have to be bold one turn, defensive in the next, sneaky towards one player and forthright with another. You might even have to do all of these things in one turn, and every game ends up a little bit different. So, without any further ado, let's learn how to play Root. Okay, so you've got your friends, you've each chosen a faction, now it's time to set things up. First, deal out 3 cards to each player. Then we set up the board. We're using the autumn map for our first game. The other side of the board is all winter themed, but you don't need to worry about it just yet. Start by setting up the items. At the top of the board are gray spaces where you'll place matching item tokens. Then, if you look at the various clearings, there are 4 spaces with an R on them. On these spaces, you'll place a random ruins item beneath the ruins token. Lastly, after placing your point tracker at 0, each faction has unique setup instructions, which we'll go over in detail a bit later. Once those are done, the board will look something like this. Pick a starting player however you like and take turns in clockwise order. Now each faction plays differently, but there are a few things that are common to everyone. Each turn you'll play out 3 phases: Birdsong, Daylight, and Evening. Birdsong includes most of the faction-specific things that happen in the game, whereas Daylight and Evening are usually about taking actions, playing cards, and then finishing up your turn. Again, I'll go into how each faction's turn goes later. For now, let's talk about the basic actions. First up is moving. It's simple. You just take as many of your warriors as you want from one clearing and move them along a path to an adjacent clearing. But there's a catch. You need to rule either the clearing you're coming from or the clearing you're moving to. Rule is determined by which player has the most collective warriors and buildings in any given clearing. And since there's no one else in this space, our flock of birds are clearly in control. The space we've moved to is now ruled by the birds as well. And if the cat wanted to leave on their turn, they could do so as long as they're moving into this space that they rule. Of course, you might not want to let them do that, and because the woods are a dangerous place, sometimes you're going to be fighting. And whenever a battle occurs, the attacker rolls the 2 dice. These have numbers ranging from 0 to 3 and will determine how many hits each side will deal. Why they used a d12 and not a 4 or an 8-sided die... Anyway, the attacker takes the higher number, so we would deal more than enough here to destroy this one measly cat. And they got a 2, but since they only have 1 warrior, their max damage is 1, meaning we each lose a warrior. The extra damage we dealt would just be lost, but let's say the cats had built up this clearing a bit. And since we dealt 3 damage, the cats would die, and then the defender chooses which pieces to remove. Anytime you force another player to remove a token or building, score 1 point. So this battle scores the birds 2. Score! Occasionally, a card or game effect will allow your units to deal extra hits, potentially more than their number of warriors. For example, if the clearing has no defending warriors, the attacker automatically gains an extra hit, regardless of what they roll. Let's talk about cards next. There are a bunch of cards in this game, but what they all have in common is that they have one of 4 suits, shown at the top of the card. These will be either foxes, rabbits, mice, or birds. The first 3 correspond to the 3 types of clearings on the board, but birds can fly, so they're considered wild. The suits of these cards are often used to fuel certain faction-specific effects, but most of them can also be crafted. If you see a signpost on the bottom left, that means you can craft the card. The symbols on that signpost refer to the crafting requirements, which will work out differently for each faction. The big thing to note is that the crafting requirements and the suit of the card might not match, so make sure you actually have what you need before crafting. Once you've crafted a card, you'll get the benefit from it, be it a persistent or immediate effect. If it's a persistent effect, place it near your player board. You can craft multiple different persistent cards, but you can't have multiples of the same card. If it's an immediate ability, resolve the effect and discard the card. And if that effect is to create an item, pull the item from the top of the map and place it on your player board, scoring however many points are listed on the card. If the supply doesn't have the matching item, you can't craft the card. Different factions will activate different game pieces for crafting, but you can only use each piece once per turn. There are 2 other kinds of cards that don't need to be crafted: ambush and dominance. At the beginning of a battle, the defender can reveal an ambush card with a suit matching the battle's clearing, dealing 2 hits to the attacker. If this destroys all of the attacking warriors, the battle is cancelled. However, the attacker can also play a matching ambush card in order to cancel the first one, so watch out. Now, dominance cards really shake things up. If you have at least 10 points, you can play a dominance card, which removes your score tracker from the board. Place it on the card itself, and now you have a new win condition, which the card will detail. It's impossible to win on the same turn that you play a dominance card, though, so you'll need to make sure you've got a strong position if you want to try it. If you discard a dominance card for any reason, instead of going into the discard pile, move it to the side of the map. It's now available for any other player to take should they so desire. To do this, during daylight, discard a card matching the suit of the dominance card and just draw it into your hand. Lastly, after you've played a few times, on the back of the autumn board is the winter board. The paths are different, and you randomly assign suits to clearings. Besides that, and being all snowy and beautiful, it's basically the same. And those are pretty much all of the shared gameplay elements of Root. Next, we'll go through faction by faction and describe how each of them work. If you want to skip to a specific faction, there are links in the description, as well as any corrections if I find out later I got something wrong. But before we move on, I need to mention that the designer has been updating the game a little bit in order to balance the different factions. These changes will be implemented in the 3rd reprint, and I'll be using those rules going forward, which is why you might notice some printed out components here and there. I'll also denote a rules change by showing this symbol in the corner, and there's a link to the official PGG update thread in the description. Now, let's get on to the cats. The Marquis de Cat has set her hungry eyes on the forest and seeks to turn it into a great industrial machine. She has earned early victories and taken much of the land, but in doing so, she has also put a target on her forehead. Let's set up the board and see why. Because your letter is A, you get to make the first choice, namely where to place your keep. This is the seat of power, and you will need to protect it during the game. We have to place it in a corner clearing, so let's choose this one over here with the 2 building slots. Next, we place 1 warrior in every clearing except the opposite corner. After that, we put down 1 of each of our buildings, choosing the clearings containing and adjacent to our keep. Lastly, we're going to flip the board and fill our tracks with the remaining buildings. Let's get into how our turns work. The cats are a good choice for beginning players because their actions are pretty recognizable as far as strategy games go. During birdsong, each sawmill creates 1 wood token. Nice and simple. Next is daylight and has 2 steps. First, we can craft cards from our hand, activating workshops in the required clearings. Let's say we want to make this root tea. Since we have a workshop and a mouse clearing, it's no problem. We play the card, grab the token, put it on our crafted items section, and gain 2 points. Good for us. Next, we get to perform 3 actions. Or we can do more than that by discarding 1 bird card per extra action taken. There are 5 options to choose from, and you can repeat most actions, so let's see what they are. Battle is simple. Start a fight in a clearing with your warriors and somebody else. March allows you to take 2 move actions in a row, so you can use this to move the same units twice, or to different stacks once, or even pick up some cats on the way. However you want to do it, but you have to finish both moves before you do your next action. Recruit lets you place 1 warrior at each recruiter, so building up recruiters can help you get big armies really quickly. You can overwork, which requires you to spend a card to place 1 wood in a matching clearing with a sawmill. And lastly, you can build. Building is the main way you get points as the cats. Do you remember the wood we got from our sawmill? This is what it's good for. Let's say we want to breed a lot of new kittens, so we decide to build a recruiter. Using this table on our player board, we see that we need to spend 1 wood to do so. Whenever you build something, gain the points listed beneath the building tile you remove. We also need to make sure our wood can get where it needs to go. Every time you build, you need to trace an unbroken line of ruled clearings from the wood to the build site. At the beginning of the game, this is easy because we control almost everything, but later on, it'll get a little more difficult. In this scenario, because all our wood is trapped here, we can't spend it to build anywhere else. After daylight is done, we move on to evening and draw 1 card, plus 1 for each card symbol showing on our player board. Then, after we've drawn, if you have more than 5 cards, discard down to 5 and pass the turn to the next player. Last thing to talk about are the cat's special rules. First is our keep. As long as it's on the board, other players can't place any game pieces in that clearing. By pieces, I mean everything. Warriors, buildings, tokens, you name it. But they can move things into the space. Of course, if it gets destroyed, all bets are off because you can't rebuild it. Second is your Field Hospitals ability, which states that whenever any of your warriors are removed, you can spend a card matching the clearing that they were in to move all of them to the clearing with a keep instead of your supply. And that's the cats. Score points for buildings, recruit a ton of warriors, and be as territorial as cats. Next up is the birds. The Eyrie Dynasty once ruled the forest. But times change, and now the Marquis has taken control. Not content to let that stand, the king seeks to drive them back. But their numbers are great, and your people are set in their ways. In order to rule again, you'll need to build an engine of conquest and protect it at all costs. We'll start with our last remaining outpost and go from there. Because we have the letter B, we set up after the cats but before anyone else. Take the corner opposite from the keep and place 1 roost and 6 warriors there. Then choose one of these 4 birds to be your leader. Each will have a special ability, and they determine which positions your loyal viziers will take. Slot them into the indicated spaces on the decree. Now this decree is everything to the birds. Each turn, it will determine which actions you must take. So let's see how it works. First, let's look at Birdsong. At the beginning of your turn, draw a card if you have none in your hand. Then add 1 or 2 cards to the decree in any space. The suits determine which clearings these actions can take place in. Because birds are wild, they count as any space, but if you're adding 2 cards to the decree, only 1 can be a bird. Then, if you have no roosts on the board, that sucks, dude, I'm sorry. You know what? Go ahead and place a roost and 3 warriors on the clearing with the fewest warriors of any faction, on me. Next is daylight, and this is where the decree takes place, but first we get to craft using our roosts. Since we start out with 1, right now we can only craft 1 card with a matching symbol. Next, our decree takes flight. Each turn, we have to perform each action once for each card in that slot of the decree. In our case, we'll need to recruit somewhere, and because our leader is so charismatic, we place 2 warriors instead of 1. Then, we need to move from a bunny clearing. Also easy, that's where we started out. Next, we do battle in any clearing, and we don't need to win here. As long as we fight, that satisfies the decree. And lastly, we need to build. Unlike the cats, you don't spend any resources to build. You just place a roost on a clearing you control that matches the card on the decree and doesn't already contain a roost. Easy, right? Well, at the beginning of the game, yes, but it gets a lot harder when your decree starts looking like this. Within each column, you can use your cards in any order, but if you are ever unable to perform an action in the decree, you go into turmoil, which is bad and has 4 steps. First, your king is humiliated, and you lose 1 point for each bird card in the decree. That includes those viziers, so it'll always be at least 2. Then you purge the decree, discarding every card except the viziers. Next, your leader is deposed. Flip them over, choose another leader, and reassign the viziers to their new posting. And lastly, you must rest, immediately ending your daylight phase and moving to evening. Now that sounds horrible, and it's not good, but it's important to note that turmoil doesn't affect your roosts, which is good because roosts are the main way you score points. In the evening, take a look at your roost's track. Whatever number is below the rightmost empty space is how many points you earn. So if you can get a lot of roosts on the board, you'll be scoring 3, 4, maybe even 5 points per turn. After you score, draw 1 card plus 1 for each card symbol shown on your board, and then discard down to 5. Lastly, let's talk about the bird's special rules. As Lords of the Forest, you rule in any clearing where you are tied in presence. Normally, this would lead to there being no ruler, but not for the Eyrie. However, you also have a disdain for trade, which means that when you craft items, no matter how many points it says you earn, you'll only get 1. And that's the Eyrie Dynasties for you. Program your way to victory, or go out in a blaze of feathery glory. I think they might be my favorite faction, but I need a few more plays to make sure. And for bonus points, here's a picture of the bird I grew up with. He was a monster and is still alive because parrots live forever. Next up is the Woodland Alliance. While the birds and the cats fight, the smaller creatures of the forest cry out. Tired of being kept down by their oppressors, an alliance has formed and must build support for the cause before it's ready to unleash its fury. As the alliance, you'll set up after the birds and the cats, but there isn't much to do at first. Simply draw 3 cards and place them face down on the supporter's space. You can look at these cards, but keep them secret to other players for now. These fuel a lot of your actions, and at the beginning of the game, you can only have up to 5. Once you have a base, then there's no limit, but I'll get to bases in a bit. Starting with Birdsong, there are 2 different actions you can take. You can do either of these actions as many times as you want, and they both require spending your supporters. First is Revolt, but I'll come back to that in a minute because I want to talk about spreading sympathy. Let's say you want to make this clearing sympathetic to the cause. In order to do that, you'll have to spend supporters matching the suit of the clearing to place a sympathy token. How many supporters you need to spend is listed above the token, and if there's a number beneath the token, you'll earn that many points for placing it. The first sympathy token can go anywhere, but after that, each token you place with this action must be placed adjacent to a sympathetic clearing. And 2 things to keep in mind real quick. Each clearing can only have 1 sympathy, and if there are 3 or more warriors of another faction in a clearing, you have to spend an extra supporter to place sympathy there. Okay, once you've got sympathy on the board, that's where the real game begins. Now you'll be able to stage a revolt. To do this, you'll spend 2 supporters matching a sympathetic clearing and an unbuilt base. Then remove all enemy pieces there, except the Vagabond, who can't be removed. After that, you place one of your 3 bases down, again matching the suit of the clearing, and placing as many warriors as you have sympathy in matching clearings. In this case, we have 2 sympathy in mouse clearings, so we would place 2 warriors. And lastly, place 1 warrior in the officer's box on your board. We'll get to them in a bit. Just remember that you revolt before you spread sympathy, so it's very powerful, but it can be difficult to pull off at times. And once you place a base, you need to protect it, because if one ever gets removed, then you have to discard all matching supporters, including birds, and you lose half of your officers. If this was the last base you had, you'll also have to discard supporters down to a maximum of 5, so be careful. Next is Daylight, where we have 3 actions that we can take as many times as we like in any order. We can craft using our sympathy, so our 2 mouse sympathy tokens would let us craft this scouting party. Then there's Mobilize, which allows you to add a card from your hand to your supporters. And lastly, we have Train. Spend a card from your hand matching the suit of a base on the board to place a warrior in the officer's box. Daylight is pretty simple, but the decisions made here can affect just about everything else you do. Moving on to Evening, this is where you perform the actions that most of the other factions do during the daylight, which makes sense for an undercover organization when you think about it. First are military operations. You can move, battle, recruit, placing a warrior at one of your bases, or you can organize, removing a warrior from a clearing and placing a sympathy token there. You can do these in any order, but the trick is that you can only take as many actions as you have officers, meaning you have to balance how many officers you have against how many warriors you want on the board. And since you only have 10 of these little green slices of bread, you'll be playing with some pretty thin margins. After you take your actions, draw 1 card, plus 1 for each card symbol showing, then discard down to 5. And lastly, let's look at your special rules. First is Outrage, which states that anytime anyone enters a sympathetic clearing or removes sympathy, they have to give you a card matching that clearing. If they don't have any matching cards, they have to show you their hand, and then you get to draw a card from the deck. Either way, the card you get goes into your supporters. The other rule is Guerrilla War. Because you always get the drop on your enemies, even when you're defending, you take the higher roll on the battle dice. So, that's the Alliance. Strike from the shadows, build a spy network, and be constantly frustrated at how few mice you have and how many cats and birds are always on the board, but end up winning most of your fights anyway. Last up is the Vagabond. The hero, the wanderer, this little weirdo. While the rest of the forest wages war, the Vagabond remains apart from it all, making allies and enemies as they see fit, free to aid other players or stab them in the back at a whim. As you might have guessed, the Vagabond plays pretty differently from the rest of the bunch, so let's get started. Your setup letter being E, you'll begin after each of the other factions. Start by choosing a character. There are 3 in the base game, so let's go with this little cutie. Each one has a special ability, I'll talk about it later. Then place your pawn in any forest on the board. Yeah, you can move through forests, no big deal. Next, you're going to take this quest deck, Shuffle it and draw 3 cards, placing them face up near the map. We've already put out the ruin, so lastly we just need to set up our player board. Place your character card and grab your starting items listed here. The board will tell you where each type of item goes. And finally, grab relationship tokens matching each other player's faction and place them on the indifferent section of your board. Now I want to talk about the Vagabond special rules first because they'll be important to know going in. First off, you're nimble, meaning you can always move regardless of who rules the clearings you go in and out of, which is good because you're also a lone wanderer, not a warrior. You can't rule clearings or stop others from ruling, but also your piece can't be removed from the map, no matter what happens. Even though your stuff can get damaged, you can't be killed, so no worries there. And those items you got, they're going to be fueling just about everything you do, and when you use an item, it's going to get flipped over. So in Birdsong, you start by refreshing 3 of your items, plus 2 more per tea that you have. Of course, if that tea is exhausted or damaged, it won't count. But anyway, refresh your items and then you get to slip, which means you get a free move into an adjacent clearing or forest. Just slip away. Now the river doesn't separate forests on the autumn board, but on the winter board it does, so keep that in mind. During daylight, you'll get to use all of your items to do actions. You can move across paths using your boots, and that's the only action that doesn't really require any further explanation. So, alright, let's get into it. Fighting is a little different with the Vagabond. When you battle, your max number of hits is equal to how many undamaged swords you have in your satchel. So if you've got 3, you can do up to 3 damage depending on your dice rolls. If you take hits, you'll have to choose items to take damage. These can't be used until they're repaired, so choose wisely. And if you have no undamaged swords, you're considered defenseless, meaning enemies will get +1 to attacks against you. It's also important to note that if you have multiple of the same item, you can take those actions multiple times. So if you gather a lot of swords, this cute little beaver can become a nigh unstoppable killing machine. Something to keep in mind. The crossbow will also help your murder quest because when you use it, you can remove a piece in your clearing from the board. You have to hit warriors first, but if they aren't there, you can use it to destroy buildings or tokens too. Next we have Explore. Exhaust a torch to take an item from a ruin in your clearing. Put it on your board, remove the ruin from the map, leaving the space open for other factions to build there, and score a point. You can also use the torch for your character's special ability. In our case, rooting through the garbage and taking a card matching our clearing. How charming. You can use your hammers to repair broken items, keeping them on whatever side they were when they were damaged, or to craft cards. When crafting, each hammer used matches the clearing you're in and satisfies 1 requirement. So in order to get the scouting party, you'll need to be in a mouse clearing and have 2 unexhausted hammers. Of course, crafting and exploring aren't the only way to get items. When the other players craft them, you can buy those items off of them for cards. If you're in a space with any of their pieces, exhaust any item to give them a card matching your clearing. Then take any item of theirs you like. The first time you do this, you'll also get in their good graces, so move yourself up 1 space on the relationship board and earn a point. If you want to go higher on this board though, it's going to cost a little extra. For each advancement, you'll need to aid them that many times in 1 turn, so to move up again will cost another 2 cards. Also, if you're just doing it for the points, the player doesn't need to have any items for you to aid them, that's just a bonus. If you make it to the 3rd level, you become allies, and then a few things change. From now on, each time you aid them, you'll gain 2 points. You can also lead their forces, meaning whenever you move, you can take their forces with you. Of course, they aren't nimble like you are, so they'll still have to follow regular movement rules. And when you initiate a battle, you add their forces to your max hits. You can make them take any amount of hits that come your way, but if they take more hits than you do, well, then you'll lose your allied status and become hostile, which also happens with any faction if you remove any of their pieces. You can still aid a hostile faction if you want, but your relationship won't improve. And this has an upside and a downside. The upside is that every time you remove one of their pieces in battle during your turn, score a point. The downside is that it takes an extra boot to move into a clearing that has any hostile warriors. Now the last action to talk about is questing. This is where those quest cards come into play. If you're in a clearing matching the quest card, you can exhaust the matching items to complete the quest. Then choose to either draw 2 cards or score a point for each quest of that suit you've completed, including the one you just finished. There are 5 quests of each suit, so you can earn a lot of points that way. Once you've completed the quest, draw a new one and place it with the others. And once you've performed as many actions as you want or can do, move on to evening. If you're in a forest, you get an evening's rest and repair all items. But remember that you can only go into a forest by slipping, so that basically means you've spent your whole turn there licking your wounds. After that, you draw 1 card plus 1 for each stack of coins you have, then discard down to 5. And if you've got too many items, you'll have to discard down to 6. But if you have bags, then your satchel size increases by 2. So if you get 3 bags, you can have up to 12 items in there. Now one more thing. It's not written on the player board, but you interact with dominance cards a little differently. Because you don't control locations, it would be impossible to ever complete them. So if you want to claim dominance, you'll have to form a coalition with another faction. In a game of 4 or more players, you can activate a dominance card, then choose the player with the fewest points besides you, and put your score tracker on their player board. And if that player was hostile, they now become indifferent. Now, if that player wins the game, the Vagabond shares in the victory. As with all dominance cards, it's difficult to pull off, but satisfying if you do. And that's the Vagabond. Blaze your own trail, look under rocks, hoard your way to victory. And that's also all of Root. Well, the base game, anyway. If you're a Patreon backer, you have access right now to the videos I've made for the factions of the Riverfolk expansion and the exclusive strategy video. Links to those are on the Patreon page. And if you want access right now, head on over, pledge a few bucks, and check it out. If not, I need to eat, but it's cool. Those videos will both go public a month from today, so make sure to subscribe for that and for the extra videos I'll be releasing in the coming weeks as well. God, so much to do. Now, if you think I got anything wrong, please let me know in the comments. I'll keep an updated corrections list in the description. And the next game I'm teaching is going to be Terraforming Mars. This game was voted on by my army of rules lawyers, and if you want to suggest games and vote on what I teach next, consider backing my Patreon and joining the legal team. I also want to extend a big thanks to the Brothers Murph for their help on the intro. We also filmed an Adventures in Board Gaming, which you can check out on their channel,